Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video will be entitled Scapegoat Hunting, comma paren, False Pretexts, end paren. All right, just want to walk you through the matrix of mendacity, what today they're calling the metaverse, the meta, the merger of control labs of Manhattan, New York with Facebook out here in California, and to create a new name for the combined companies called Meta. And of course, in Hebrew, meta means dead, meaning no cognitive action, no tenets of thinking, you're dead. Now, you can still have a pulse rate and be a zombie, but you're dead in terms of intellectual critical thinking. You're dead. That's meta, right? Now, in Greek mythology, meta can mean beyond. Like what's beyond humanity? Well, I'll tell you, post-humanity. Post-humanity is beyond humanity. And post-humanity is meta dead because it's the zombification, human augmentation, converting human beings into walking antennas, walking hard drives, zombies, a zombie apocalypse with no tenets of thinking, no cognition, no brain capability for intellectual thought, which would be beyond humanity, right? It's into the zombie cyborg land. It's meta. In other words, beyond humanity or meta dead in terms of cognition and cognitive reasoning. You are beyond human thinking. All right. So let me give you some specific examples, and I have just literally hundreds of them. I'll give you about 15 or 16 of them. Here we go. You might want to grab an adult beverage, hit the pause button, maybe take a couple Prozacs, and come on back and push the go code when you're ready. All right, here we go. Well, back in 1898 in February, there was a port facility in Cuba called Havana, and it was guarded by the United States Navy and, of course, the Marines. The Marines are the ones who guard the ships on behalf of the sailor boys. Now, there was a Navy ship called the USS Maine that was moored in the port of Havana, Cuba. You do know that the United States of America completely controlled the entire island of Cuba in 1898, just like they do today in 2026. So don't fall for the potato in your tailpipe. Cuba has no unique sovereignty or independence. They're part of Swiss Bank Authority. And just so you know, the United States Navy doesn't belong to the United States. It belongs to Geneva, Switzerland, who, by the way, doesn't have a port facility on an ocean. But that's okay because they use all the other port facilities around the world, from Marseille to the River Thames to Lake Michigan to the Great Lakes to San Francisco, Port of Oakland, Port of Los Angeles, Port of Long Beach, Port of San Diego. Is all under control of Switzerland. So anyway, getting back to 1898 in February, the United States Maine exploded in the middle of the night. And when the dust cleared and 266 sailors were declared dead, William Randolph Hearst and his newspaper chain kicked into high gear, and they coined the phrase, "Remember the Maine and to hell with Spain." You see, that's scapegoat hunting, right? Without having done an investigation, without a single reporter or journalist looking into kicking the tires down there in Havana way, they instead decided don't let the truth get in the way of a good fairy tale and just blame it on the Spanish so that we can invade the Philippines and boot those Spanish colonials out and take their place. And it doesn't matter to Switzerland because Spain belongs to Switzerland too. So we just switched out the Spanish for the United States Navy in the Philippines. But it was all on the pretext, a false pretext, that the Spanish mined the USS Maine in the port of Havana in February 1898 under the noses of the United States Marines. And since my brother was an officer in the Marines, sort of a insult to the Navy and the Marines that they're incapable of protecting their own ships, right? In 1898. All right. So anyway, that's example number one. I'm absolutely certain that the Spanish frogman, without any oxygen tanks, could blow up a ship and kill 266 people all by themselves, um, without any detection or being apprehended. All right. Next example, we'll just bang through these. The John F. Kennedy assassination in Dealey Plaza, a park that's shaped in as a triangle, as a pyramid, with an obelisk, just like they have in Geneva, Switzerland. They have an obelisk in Dallas, Texas, in the at the corner of Houston and Main Street, on the northwest corner. There's an obelisk, and there are two, count them, two reflection ponds in the shadow of that obelisk. That's very Masonic, in case you didn't know. Dealey Plaza is named after George Dealey, who's a 33-degree Scottish Rites Templar, which is part of the Knights Templar of Geneva, Switzerland. So, and he is also the owner of the Rising Sun or the Dallas Morning News, which is, of course, the Mockingbird media laughing at you. And if you look at the street addresses of the office buildings that define the base of the pyramid, you're going to see it's a six, it's a six, and a six. 666 is Mark of the Beast. And when John Kennedy drove past them in the back seat of the limousine, he turned his back to the 666, inverting it to a 999, which is which is meta debt, means you're dead, right? So we have that going on in Dallas, Texas. That was on November 22nd, 1963, which is a 33, right? The highest level of obedience within the obelisk chain of command. So the obelisk is a chain of command for the military of the Knights Templar in Geneva, Switzerland, which is NATO. Essentially, it's NATO. All right. So Jack Kennedy was killed in an obedience ritual, a ritual killing execution in a 999 address in in a baseball throw away from an obelisk in a triangle by three shooters who were kneeling at Main Street at the railroad trestle. It's about a 250-foot shot. Boy Scout could do it. But two shooters fired. There were extra shooters, but they weren't needed, and they shot out his voice box, which is a Masonic code of code of silence, omerta, and his right eyeball, which leaves him with the left eye of Horus, which is a Egyptian mysticism story. You can look in on your own. Then we had Martin Luther King assassination. They blame that on James Earl Ray. They blame JFK on Lee Harvey Oswald, again, with no investigation, with no looking into it. Walter Cronkite declared Lee Oswald the shooter, killer of John Kennedy. This was done in about 90 minutes. And then he signs off the broadcast with, well, that's the way it is. And you know, whatever Walter Cronkite says, who's a member of the Delmo Yale Society on One World Order out of Geneva, is a bald-faced lie. So when Walter Cronkite utters those preposterous words, that's the way it is, he means this is the way it isn't, is not. This is not the way it is. But anyway, Lee Oswald was blamed in the USS Maine. Spain was blamed. In the case of Martin Luther King, James Earl Ray was blamed. He didn't do it. Robert Francis Kennedy, was killed on Wilshire Boulevard at the Ambassador Hotel. He was blamed on Saran Saran. He didn't do it. A Lockheed employee of the Skunk Works did it. Thane Eugene Caesar shot Robert Kennedy behind the right ear into his skull with the barrel of the pistol touching his head. All right. Then we had the Gulf of Tonkin incident to create a 10-year war in Vietnam. This was blamed on the North Vietnamese Communist Navy. The problem there, of course, is that North Vietnam doesn't have a navy. They don't have any navy ships. Now, they do have wooden fishing boats. Is that what you mean? That somebody attacked the USS Maddox destroyer with a wooden fishing boat? Is that the Gulf of Tonkin incident? Anyway, we had a 10-year war. And during that war, we had the Tet Offensive, where the locals wreaked havoc upon the American colonial imperialists who were invading their country. And immediately, upon a ceasefire of the Tet Offensive, we had the My Lai massacre, which involved the murder of between 504 and 654 women, children, and older men and pregnant women by bayonet or M16 rifle or hand grenades. All right, because they did throw hand grenades into the hooches or the homes. They also lit them on fire and shot pigs and chickens too. Anyway, that involved a minimum of 300 United States Army soldiers for NATO, plus airplane traffic above, plus helicopters above to coordinate and orchestrate the slaughter of innocent, unarmed civilians in a strategic hamlet and have the perimeter 100% guarded by over 200 Army men and send 100 Army men of Charlie Company into the village to create murder, mayhem, and felony crimes against civilians. Anyway, that was supposed to be top secret, but it got leaked out 18 months later. And so they had to select and hunt down a scapegoat. They did. The junior officer in field that day, that Saturday morning, was William Calley. This is 1968. I think it was March 16th, Saturday morning. They entered the village around 7:20, 7:30, and spent the next almost 4 hours murdering people. I think it was about 3 hours and 20 minutes or so of murdering. All right, so they blamed it on William Kelly, but one man can't kill 500 to 650 people, right? So they apparently excused 99% of the criminals, which would include the commanding officers who are flying above and have the rank of colonel, and they're in airplanes flying above watching the whole thing unfold. All right, then we had the murder of Abigail Folger and Sharon Tate and Lena LaBianca and four others, seven victims. And they didn't have a scapegoat right away. It went on for almost 4 months. And then we got out to Thanksgiving, which was almost 4 months after the murder. It was blamed on the Manson family, which, just so you know, there's no such thing as the Manson family. There isn't even a Charlie Manson. There's a no-name Maddox who has been designated as Charlie Manson. His birth certificate reads no name Maddox. Anyway, they blame them despite the fact that there's no murder weapons, there's no fingerprints, there's no forensics, there's no proof whatsoever that anyone who was put on trial was present for either crime on Saturday early morning in the wee hours in Beverly Hills, Benedict Canyon, and then the next day, Sunday morning, in what's called Silver Creek on Los Feliz Drive in Silver Creek area, East Hollywood. It's where Walt Disney once lived. That's the neighborhood I'm talking about. Then, concurrently with all these things, the My Lai reporting of the My Lai massacre, which was attributed really to Ronald Rettenauer, who wrote 30 letters to Congress and Richard Nixon and his cabinet. But they claim that Seymour Hersh figured it out. It's untrue. He did not. All right, and then we had the Tate LaBianca Folger murders going on, and we had Zodiac murders going on. Um, we didn't know them as Zodiac murders until about August 2nd. You know, around the time that the Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger murder happened, murders in Northern California near me, near Juxtaposition's home, murders happening in and around me and my paper route were just unsolved, unknown, mystery killers killers, and there was no mention of any Zodiac. It wasn't until the Sharon Tate murders that then we claimed that the media said that there were letters sent to the Examiner in San Francisco newspaper, the Examiner and the Chronicle, the DeYoung family and the William Randolph Hearst family. And in the letters, a anonymous person calling himself Zodiac took credit for four victims that had happened 7 months earlier. In terms of Betty Lou Jensen, age 16, shot in the back 5 times, and then shot in the chest twice. And then her date, David Faraday, shot once in his in his left temple with what appears to be a AR-15 rifle. And then Darlene Ferrin on the 4th of July at around 10:30, 10:45 p.m. in a Blue Rock Springs park in a unlit parking lot. She shot 9 times with a 9 millimeter. And her date, David Faraday, pardon me, Michael Mageau is her date. Michael Mageau. He's shot and wounded. He's not killed, meaning he wasn't the target of the killer. That the killer had was to kill Darlene, and he made damn sure he did. He shot her 9 times with a 9 millimeter, or multiple 9 millimeters, meaning two shooters killed her, probably. But Michael Michaud uh, recovered from his wounds, and he was in the rear seat, which is kind of unusual, don't you think? If you're on a date, why are you in the rear seat? Do you think maybe the killers ordered him to get in the rear seat, and then fragged him, then killed Darlene, because just to get him out of the way? What it looks like to me, that's juxtapositions, kind of deductive reasoning. I'm not a detective, but I am a sleuth. Okay. I even have my Sam Spade sleuther hat, right? This is my Sam Spade detective hat, right? I'm a sleuth. I can sleuth. I can sleuth with the best of them. All right. So we blame the Manson family. About 4 months after the funerals of everybody, there were 7 people killed. And there were 7 Zodiac victims, of which 5 died. There were 5 deaths, and 2 men survived. In the case of Brian Hartwell, he was stabbed, but not fatally. And Michael Mageau was shot with a 9 millimeter, but not fatally. And that raises a lot of questions. Why weren't they done away with? All right. So then we have the Dr. Victor Oda massacre, which was a grand total of 5 humans: Dr. Oda, his wife, Virginia, his 2 sons, Travis and Taggart, and his secretary, Dorothy Cadwallader. So that's 4 people. They were shot in the back of the head. They had scarves tied around their eyes so they didn't know when they were going to be killed. They were shot from behind and then shoved into the swimming pool where they floated or sank. There was a kitty cat on the property. The cat was shot and thrown into the pool for a 6th victim. It was blamed very quick, like a bunny rabbit, on John Linley Frazier, who was an unemployed automobile mechanic living in a creek bed about a mile and a half away from the murder scene. And you should know the murder scene's address is 999 North Rodeo Gulch Road in Soquel, Santa Cruz County. So again, just like John Kennedy, we have a 999 for the address of the murders of 5 people, just like we have the 999 address for the murder of Jack Kennedy. All right. Anyway, they blamed him and quickly convicted him. First, they shaved his head to make him look like a Charlie Manson clone, right? And they convicted him. But again, there's no murder weapon was found, no forensics. The whole thing was absurd. It was a railroad. We have the murder of Mary Richardson Kennedy, who was married to Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., RFKJ. She was garroted and then displayed in her barn in Mount Kisco, New York. There was a really tall ladder in the barn, but in a different part of the barn than where she was. So the media immediately called it a suicide without, again, any investigation whatsoever by police. So it was deemed a suicide, and it's remained a suicide, even though it's a garrote murder with the display of a hanging. Um, and Robert Kennedy Jr. doesn't discuss it. I wouldn't either. If I was implicated in the crime, I wouldn't discuss it. All right, then we have Erin Valente, age 33. She was murdered after meeting with Dean Jacobson at KKR Excel, and the night before having dinner with J.J. Cardwell, 2 private bankers on Sand Hill Road. And those are the last people to see her alive, and they didn't even bring them in for questioning because I guess they're exempt from any kind of suspicion of homicide murder, right? Anyway, Erin Valente was like Houdini on a magic carpet. She disappeared for 5 days and then reappeared at a 999 address. Actually, the address is 6615 Bose Lane, in Almaden, San Jose, Santa Clara County. And there she is, not in the front seat of her car, mind you. She's in the rear seat in a fetal position with her back to the 666 address. 6615 comports to 666. When you turn your back to it, just like John Kennedy did, it becomes inverted into 999 and it's meta dead. All right, stay with me. Now, they blamed the Aaron Valente murder on a manic episode, which, of course, is poppycock and balderdash, right? There's no such thing as a manic episode. It's like saying I had a headache and so I died. My heart stopped. Doesn't explain how I disappeared for 5 days, though. Betsy Arakawa, who's married to Gene Hackman, living on a military Pueblo fortress high above the city of Santa Fe, New Mexico. It is a dead end cul de sac with guardhouses outside of their gate, who probably conducted the murder of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa. After the medical examiner came back, they said that Betsy died of rodent droppings. But that doesn't make sense because juxtaposition here, I had a hamster for many years and I cleaned many rodent droppings. And do I look dead to you? No, I'm not dead. We had Jeffrey Epstein, who's in the compromising people in children's sex crimes and videotaping and audio taping, executives in Hollywood, executives at corporations, executive bankers, and politicians who really don't have any authority, but it's always good to get compromising things. People like Donald Trump, people like Alan Dershowitz, people like Noam Chomsky, people like Woody Allen, people like Kevin Spacey, people like RFKJ, who flew on the Lolita Express airplane, people like that. Pretty much everybody. Anyway, they said that he committed suicide in maximum security federal prison in New York City. So, of course, that's an absurd story. You couldn't even commit suicide in the county jail, let alone a supermax with cameras in your cell. And yet, that's what they said. That's what I call a scapegoating of the prison guards, I guess. And the cameras were turned off. All right, then we had what else I got here? I should probably wrap this up, right? I mean, we have radiation poisoning from Geneva, Switzerland, the ITU, International Telecommunication Union. They decide how much radiation poisoning we're all subjected to because we all live in a microwave oven in a strategic hamlet. Because there are no peoples, there are no nations, there's no independence, there's no democracy, there's no constitution, there's no Bill of Rights, there's no republic, there's no representative form of government. Your city council doesn't work for you, the mayor doesn't work for you, your governor does not work for you, and the Congress of the United States does not work for you. Your attorney general of your state does not work for you. They work for Geneva, Switzerland. That's who pays them because the United States is insolvent, has no money. All right, so we have radiation poisoning through direct energy weapons, which go by many names, such as terraswarm, neuromodulation, molecular engineering. That also goes by electronic warfare or direct energy weapons, or it goes by LED, light emitting diodes, photonics, optogenetic light weaponry, using light as a weapon. And we also have sound, ultrasonic, and sonic weapons expressed in the form of ring cameras and smart meters. They're sensitive to sound. Okay. And then you put them all three together and you have an array, right? You have a backscatter array, and then you dump aluminum and polymers and titanium and arsenic poison overhead with military planes every 10 minutes, 16 hours a day, like in my town. And you have a inescapable, ubiquitous, full spectrum dominance array, a phased vector array. Pay pause. Pay pause. Phased array vector evaluation array of smart dust sensors, which get on your skin or in your nose, in your lungs, in your brain, in your pituitary gland, and then they become bio weapons. Or you go down and get a COVID Omicron booster shot, or the flu shot, or a bird flu shot, or a monkeypox shot, or any kind of a shot from a pimp who works for Medicare, and then you have a bioweapon installed in your body known as a COVID-19 vaccine. It's a bioweapon. It's putting aluminum and plastics and graphene foreign materials into your body, which are highly frequent. That's the material that goes into your cell phone, your laptop computer, your computer. Radiation poisoning is to receive and to send signals from light frequency, sound frequency, and direct energy, or EMF, electronic magnetic resonance, EMF, electronic magnetic frequency resonance, like the MRI machine. Okay, the ultrasonic machine is light based. Is everything that I'm telling you about is in your local acute care hospital under precision medicine, e-medicine, e-pharmacy. All the weapons are tested out at assisted living facilities and acute care hospitals. Those are basically NATO research laboratories, in case you didn't know. And we have all of this going under these phony, fake cover stories that we're going to cure cancer, that we're spending trillions of dollars to cure cancer, when the reality is we're creating and emphasizing cancer as part of pacification control of our citizens in the way that the My Lai massacre did with bayonets and automatic rifles. All right, we call it climate action, right? Climate action. What a joke. Electric cars, electric charging station, restrictions, travel restrictions, shelter in place. It's all part of climate action to reduce our carbon footprints, whilst the military dumps pollution on you. Precision medicine, point of care medicine, personalized medicine. We're going to tokens, right? That's what the Real ID is. Real ID verified. And that's what the vaccines are, right? It's to hook you up to the internet, hack your body, and tether you to the cloud. Then use tokens, which are social obedience credit, also known as programmable money, to turn everyone into an inmate within the prison. The prison being your strategic hamlet, your secured corridor, your grid, your kill box. It's human augmentation. That's what it is. But they don't want to call it that. They want to call it personalized medicine, e-medicine, e-pharmacy, precision medicine. It's not. It's human augmentation. It's real ID verified, programmable money, meaning you're locked in or locked out of the system. You're locked in, then they can kill you anytime they want. If you're locked out, they'll hunt you with drones and robotic dogs. So either way, it's bad. It's bad to be hooked up, and it's bad to be an escapee on the plantation. All right, that's my point today. Let me just recap that we live in a matrix of mendacity, all right? That the media lies 24/7, that they always call whatever is nationally presented to you what it isn't, just like Walter Cronkite says, and that's the way it is. You should know that means that's the way it is not. That is not the way it is. And the latest scandal, of course, is Deanna Ruzzini and the coach of the New England Patriots steroid football team, Michael uh, Verbal. And they're both married, having an affair for over 6 years. Could be having an affair for 10, 15 years. Don't really know. No one's telling the truth. The story is not about those two. Okay. They're just clowns in the circus. The story is about the NFL football league and the steroids and all the concealment that goes on with 100% of all the pseudo journalists and reporters who report on football entertainment. They want you to think it's pure as the driven snow and that they have rules and they don't have a doping problem and the referees don't cheat, even though they all collect gambling money. They promote and pimp gambling, and ESPN Disney is a partner with NFL in promoting gambling and covering the Super Bowl next February, February 2027. ESPN is covering it. And Deanna Ruzzini worked for Disney ESPN for over 8 years, and she works for the New York Times for the last 3 years. And this implicates the New York Times, and it implicates Disney, and it implicates ESPN, and CBS Sports, and NBC and Comcast Sports, because they all receive advertising revenue of the corporations that Deanna Ruzzini uh, writes stories for. All those people pick up on her interviews. And they're all complicit in the crimes of doping, cheating, fixing the game. That's what the NFL does. They fix the game. They decide who's going to win the Super Bowl a year before the Super Bowl is played. And ESPN Disney doesn't want you to know that they cheat and lie, and then they tell you that this is a product, that this is a wholesome product. That's why they want to contain the story to two cheating married people. I don't care about married people cheating. I care that the number one televised sport in America is filthy, dirty, it's violent, it's doped, it's rigged, it's fixed, it's fake. The athletes are real, but they're really on drugs and they crash into each other and have concussions every 30 seconds. And really, it's a sport that should be terminated, along with Joe Rogan and mixed martial arts and boxing. Those sports should be terminated. Then you're going to be left with all the doped tennis players, all the doped basketball players, the doped baseball players with their cork bats, all the doped golfers, all the cheating that goes on in golf, all the cheating that goes on in cycling, all the cheating that goes on in Olympic track and field, and Bruce Jenner, Caitlin, and cycling and weightlifting and badminton. You know, they dope in Olympic badminton. There's not a single sport that is clean. Swimming, running, cycling, filthy dirty, just like football and World Cup soccer, which is the big football game in the world, is World Cup soccer. It's way bigger than NFL football, which NFL stands for not for long. All right, juxtaposition. I have said my piece today. Do like and share my videos. I am heavily shadow banned, as you can imagine. I am not a friend of Disney. I am not a friend of Michael Eisner or Bob Iger. I am not a friend of Rich Eisen or any of the other pimps over there at ESPN. They're all cover artists. Anybody that goes on Dan Patrick and apologizes for infidelity and says it has nothing to do with football should be put into a prison cell with no windows. Thanks very much for listening. We'll talk soon. Bye now.